your bags are packed and ready to go as soon as international travel goes back to normal. Because, hey, there's nothing quite like exploring strange places and cultures for us to better appreciate the world we live in.
I always say the world is my university.
Well, culture is my university.
Well, the world has culture, so that is also my university.
But if the world is your university, you might second guess enrolling in these countries you're about to see because their cultural courses are unlike any other on the planet. Let's take a virtual tour around the 9 strangest countries in the world. What's up, Factnatics? This is Discovery Amuse, serving up your daily dose of the most outrageous, outlandish, and out-of-this-world fun facts. We can't blame you if it's the first time you'll hear about our top 1 pick, but we assure you, booking that flight to visit this virtually forgotten nation is well worth the ticket price.
We'd now like to welcome any travelers with carry-ons that have no chance of fitting in the overhead compartment.
Number 9. North Korea. Considered the most isolated and controlled country in the world, the Hermit Kingdom of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea has been in conflict with South Korea since 1953, and until today, no peace treaty has been signed between the two governments. Being a nation so shrouded in mystery, it's easy for outsiders to assume negative things about the life in North Korea, but you might be surprised at what a number of journalists and travel vloggers have discovered here.
We have a very strict procedure about who can enter into the country because we are very tired of propaganda media.
Scrap your plans of going on a spontaneous backpacking trip here because the only way to get inside North Korea is by being a part of a guided tour which assembles in China. From there, you will board Air Koryo going to the capital city of Pyongyang.
This place is such a close community that everything they produce is produced internally, which means there's no trade or very little trade with other nations.
Once there, you are expected to be with your tour guide at all times. You can't wander off too during the guided tour to the city's authorized sites and shops because not just you, but your tour guide could also get into trouble.
Sorry folks, park's closed. The moose out front should have told you.
Any unauthorized activity can be considered espionage, even taking pictures of places and people without permission. When taking pictures of the statues of the country's leaders, their whole bodies must be fully inside the frame.
In the country, they are our parents, the parents of the nation and the parents of our ideology.
Forget about taking pictures of government buildings, police, and construction sites too, if you don't want to be apprehended or have your camera confiscated. But despite all these rules, there's so much culture to be experienced inside the Hermit Kingdom. Yes, the kids go to school, the adults take trains to work, and people know how to have fun singing, dancing in parks, and playing sports. Stick around till number 1 and discover the hidden wonders of one of the tiniest countries on Earth. Number 8. Eritrea.
حد بالنلا سنم سلام هرنتا كل بارو سلايني إرترا حدني بارو تكك كاتككي سلام هنا يمكن مشبو بلو آمن كمرين.
It's a shame that this tiny African nation has earned the moniker of Africa's North Korea despite having formally ended its long-standing conflict with neighboring Ethiopia in 2018. But don't be put off by the nickname because exploring Eritrea and its capital city of Asmara could easily make you feel like you're not in Africa, but rather in Italy.
As an Italian, what do you think about Asmara?
Yeah, it looks really, really Italian. I had the best spaghetti and pizza that I ever had outside Italy.
Eritrea sits in the Horn of Africa on the very northeastern part of the continent. In 1882, Italians came into the country and started building communities here. But even though the Italians have been gone for more than 45 years now, their influence is still very much apparent in the culture, architecture, and even language.
It's super clean. Everyone is very, very friendly and welcoming.
The Italians designed more than 400 buildings in a construction boom that was only halted when Italy got involved in World War II. The remnants of these masterpieces can now be seen in its capital, Asmara, which has also been declared as a UNESCO World City Heritage in 2017.
This whole idea of a country that is closed, that is isolated, or that willfully represents or pursues an isolationist policy is wrong.
Once you get past the tedious visa restrictions, entering Eritrea feels like stepping back in time. People still use telephone booths, old cars, and some people from the older generation can still speak fluent Italian.
La macchina che va dappertutto. A car that goes anywhere.
This car?
Yeah, this car.
Number 7. Turkmenistan. If your goal is to visit the gates of hell, then this Central Asian nation should be part of your bucket list, because sitting right in the middle of the Darvaza Desert in Turkmenistan is this geological anomaly called Darvaza Gas Crater that's been burning since 1971.
Feeling good? Looking pretty amazing?
However, you might find it hard to enter the country in the first place because, like North Korea, the only way you can step inside this isolated nation is by joining a guided tour. No wonder it's the 7th least visited country in the world.
I feel like we're on the set of a post-apocalyptic zombie film.
In the capital city of Ashgabat, you'll find what might be the greatest number of white marble buildings you'll ever see in your life. About 1,000 of them. In fact, the city holds the world record for the highest density of white marble-clad buildings. If that's not obsession, I don't know what is.
Ministry of Education, open book.
And this is the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs. You see that in the top globe?
Yeah.
There's a golden Turkmenistan.
But despite all the beautiful structures, intricate monuments, and manicured gardens, the city almost looks like a ghost town with barely any locals out on the streets.
It's like a socialist, futurist kind of a paradise where everything's white and preened and there's public parks and sports and trees.
But no people.
And monuments. There's no people.
Forget updating your IG or Facebook stories while you're in Turkmenistan, because internet access is scarce and most social media sites are blocked anyway. Take this, less than 1% of its 6 million residents have internet connection. Now that's what I call a real hell on earth. Number 6, Bhutan.
Welcome to Bhutan!
Tucked between China and India, the small country of Bhutan is known as the last Shangri-La because of its largely unspoiled natural environment and cultural heritage. But aside from the gorgeous landscapes and the fact that it's the last Buddhist kingdom in the world, Bhutan is best known for ditching GDP as their metric for economic prosperity. Instead, they use GNH, or Gross National Happiness. And because of this, Bhutan has always been ranked as one of the happiest nations in Asia. But what does GNH actually mean?
That economic growth must not be mindless. It should also be sustainable, environmentally sustainable. And it also should be equally spread throughout society.
In fact, students are taught this economic philosophy in school to instill in them the true meaning of happiness at a young age.
Desi trees, flowers.
If you find yourself in Bhutan, make sure you visit the Tiger's Nest, one of the country's holiest mountains. I also have to warn the conservative types because part of the Bhutanese culture also involves an abundant display of phallic symbols and structures around town.
What's the deal with all the penises on all the houses?
Yeah, to protect from the evil and the curse.
Entry is free for citizens of India, Bangladesh, and the Maldives. However, if you're coming from countries other than those, you have to be pretty loaded because the government requires tourists to pay a tax of $250 per day. But that fee already covers your tour guide, transportation, meals, and accommodation. Seems like money can buy you happiness after all. Number 5, Nauru. Would you believe this tiny island nation in the middle of the Pacific Ocean used to be one of the wealthiest countries in the world? But now it's one of the poorest, the least visited, and the most obese. But let's first talk about how minuscule this island is. It's only about 5.4 kilometers, and you can literally drive around the entire perimeter in 30 minutes.
I think I drove it about 10 times over with my moped.
There's only a handful of shops and restaurants, 1 hospital, 2 hotels, 1 fire station, 1 post office, and 0 movie theaters. What can you expect from a country with a population of just about 10,000?
There's a strong sort of still family connection in Nauru.
Its former wealth came from migratory birds, which basically made Nauru their toilet in the old times. Soon, most of the island was sitting on gold as the bird's poop was turned into phosphate, which is used in fertilizers. After achieving independence in 1968, Nauru enjoyed an economic boom during the 1970s and 80s because of mining rights. As a result, the per capita GDP became one of the highest globally, and people didn't need to work anymore.
It's not that I'm lazy, it's that I just don't care.
But eventually, the over-exploitation of Nauru's natural resources caught up with them. When the phosphate reserves dried up, Nauru became one of the poorest countries in the world. Almost 80% of the island became uninhabitable, and their addiction to Western influences and lack of exercise left the country with an obesity problem.
Food draws family together, the fish, rice nowadays, and then we've got all the great imported meats like rump steak and all that, chicken.
More than 20% of all adults between the ages of 25 to 64 suffer from diabetes, a tragic fate for a country that had its fair share of glory in the not-so-distant past. Number 4. Djibouti. Djibouti sits at the Horn of Africa along the Red Sea. But the funny name aside, because it sounds like booty, this country is considered the most expensive in Africa. A bottle of Coke can set you back around $5, a chocolate bar $12, and even taking photos can cost you a hefty sum.
They demanded $100 for a photo permit, which I've Googled does not exist. So there's a lot of corruption here.
The country's strategic location makes it a prime spot for foreign military bases. Aside from the French forces, you have the US, Chinese, and Japanese forces present here. This contributed to the prices of goods skyrocketing. And did I mention that security is super tight in this country? Djibouti City is literally peppered with armed police at the airport, in the streets, and inside the malls. So you better think twice about vlogging here out in the open.
So I'm filming part of this video on my phone because I've already been stopped twice by the police for using my camera.
Number 3. Equatorial Guinea. Those basic Spanish classes you took in high school could really come in handy here, as Equatorial Guinea is the only Spanish-speaking nation in Africa.
Hola, aquí en Guinea Ecuatorial todos hablamos el español.
It's also the second biggest oil reserve and the fastest growing economy on the continent. However, corruption is so bad that the country seems to have 2 entirely different faces. Behind all the grandeur and opulence lies an overwhelming poverty that affects 3/4 of the population.
Today, Equatorial Guinea has the widest gap between GDP per capita, or income per capita, and Human Development Index, access to healthcare, access to water, access to education.
Lavish buildings, hotels, and structures litter the capital city of Malabo, but there's practically no people around. The economic divide is so visible that the leaders flaunt their million-dollar purchases on social media, while the majority suffers under the poverty line. Number 2. Tuvalu.
Have you ever heard of Tuvalu?
Tuvalu?
Yeah.
No, I have not. Might be a bar? The band?
Kind of animal.
Electronics, oil, and tourism are just some of the major sources of income that countries typically have. But Tuvalu is not your typical country. You know where they get the majority of their dough? From their internet domain name, .tv. They earn royalties for every use of the domain .tv, which isn't too shabby for a country of just 11,000 residents.
Yeah, in the contract there was like some money coming to Tuvalu, and it's now around 5 million per year.
Situated midway between Hawaii and Australia, the 26-square-kilometer island of Tuvalu is the second least visited country in the world, despite essentially being one long, beautiful beach.
This country is so thin, you can literally see both sides of the water pretty much at any point.
Flights are scarce, and most visitors come from people doing business with locals, so the lone airport in the island state becomes one massive playground come late afternoon.
We just landed here 2 days ago, and now the entire country is here playing on the runway.
If you're planning to visit this simple yet exquisite island, you better do it soon because due to global warming, Tuvalu is expected to sink and become uninhabitable in the next 50 to 100 years, and the locals believe it might happen much sooner. Before we go to our number one pick, do us a solid and make sure to smash the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Don't forget to choose all so you won't miss out on any of our latest life-changing, boredom-busting content. And of course, be sure to turn on notifications in your app settings. Number 1. Comoros. Known as the perfumed island of the world because of its main exports, lang-lang, vanilla, cloves, and cinnamon, Comoros is a tiny yet sensational country situated somewhere between Madagascar, Mozambique, and Tanzania.
We planted ylang-lang and other crops, but it's ylang-lang that still generates an income today.
Despite being an African country, Comoros is highly influenced by French and Arabic cultures, and a lot of the locals can speak at least 3 languages fluently.
Comoros is an Arabic name, which means Al-Qamar, the moon. But French call it Comor, and English we call it Comoros.
Don't be surprised if you see women with strange-looking beauty masks, because it's a traditional mud pack made of sandalwood that helps protect their faces from the harsh sun.
The women, every people talk like this one, and clean, very nice.
Like our previous entries, traveling to Comoros is not easy as there are very few flights to its capital, Moroni. But the trip is worth it because its islands are rich in flora and fauna, especially on Mount Karthala, the country's biggest and most active volcano. So, which of these places would you want to fly to, like right now? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Take home any of our exclusive gear by browsing our merch shelf or clicking the link in the video description. And while you're at it, take our quiz to find out how you can earn extra cash online doing what you do best. Awesome, right? Feeling a bit more adventurous? Then why not check out our list of the 10 most heavily guarded places on Earth? Till then, stay curious, Factnatics, and see you in the next video.